You don't know Jack.
Count what you have now, don't count what you don't have. Count what you have now.
On September 28th, 2017, Stickfight the game was published for PC and Mac by Landfall, an indie game company from Sweden. The game itself was developed by Landfall West, described by one of the developers as the 4 people on the west side of the office that worked on Stickfight. However, the game itself was published by Landfall. Upon release, Stickfight made big waves in the YouTube gaming community, with some videos on the game nearly reaching 10 million views. It was clear that people had nostalgia for the stick fighting genre that was rampant on YouTube several years ago. The game was even developed into a mobile game which received a soft launch on May 23, 2019 and a worldwide release soon after. More recently, the game has made its way over to the Nintendo Switch on April 1, 2021, and the development team have plans to bring the game over to Xbox and PlayStation fairly soon as well. So how did this little side project become so popular, and is it worth your human money? Let's dissect Stickfight the game and find out for ourselves. Unfortunately, not much is known about the development of the game. The only reliable source of information is the press kit created for the game's release, which states that the game's concept and fundamentals were formed in an event known as No More Sweden, a one-man game jam event that took place from June 9th to June 11th of 2017. One of the attendees to No More Sweden that year was Wilhelm Nyland, who used the physics system from Landfall's previous game Totally Accurate Battle Simulator to create a couch multiplayer game. After the idea showed promise, Nyland decided to continue creating the game, along with Pontus Olbors, who did the art, Carl Floden, who worked on the music, and Philip Wester, who took care of the programming. These 4 were the people who made up the division known as Landfall West, and they worked on the game for late nights and weekends for roughly 3 months from July to September of 2017. Once the development was complete, all that was left for the team was to watch as Landfall released their creation to the world on September 28, 2017. Once the game was released, it generated a lot of attention, particularly from many popular Let's Play creators including Jacksepticeye, DanTDM, Vanos Gaming, Jelly, It's Funny, and many more. While it's not clear as to how they themselves found the game, the ripple effect was massive, as these creators generated a large amount of interest towards the game, providing it with a large fanbase from its release alone. At one point, the game surpassed 5,000 concurrent players a few days after it came out on Steam. However, these numbers were temporary, and they soon dropped to around 1,000 average concurrent players on most days, but this number sometimes rose to around 2,000. These rises were most often caused by certain popular YouTubers creating rogue stickfight videos, such as Slimsicle, Video Game Donkey, and Smitty. Still, for what Landfall considers a side project, these were fairly decent numbers, and some were interested to see the game released on consoles, as Landfall had teased in some previous updates. But before I get into any ports or other versions of this game, I'd like to share my own opinions on this game. If I had to use a single image to represent my feelings on this game, I would use this. Yeah, that pretty much summarizes it. Fun fact, I planned on quickly jumping on Stickfight for a little bit so I could summarize it better for this review, and I ended up playing it for a whole hour, which kinda shows how addictive it is. Anyway, onto the proper review. Stickfight is an absolute blast of a game. From the movement, to the respawning, to the music, everything is fast-paced, snappy, and to the point. The gameplay is easy to learn but difficult to master, and bundles of fun to play with both friends and strangers. Although playing with friends does create a better experience based off of what I've played. Despite all my positive experiences, I do have some criticisms, and most of them regard bugs. This game has a lot of them, and here are just a few. Sometimes players fall off the map but they don't die, sometimes players are just completely immortal, sometimes the map disappears, sometimes typing leads to someone else's text box being used, sometimes people can one-hit kill for no reason, sometimes people die at the beginning of the round but appear to come back as ghosts, otherwise win the game, sometimes lasers don't work, sometimes you can't type or do anything, sometimes the boss fights just never stop and force everyone to restart, and worse, sometimes the game just completely crashes, doesn't allow you to get out of the window unless you completely restart your computer. Okay, bug rant over. In conclusion, despite my massive rant about all the bugs, this game is super fun and a joy to play most of the time. In my opinion, if the game wasn't nearly as buggy, it would have way more popularity and a better reception overall. Not to say that the game wasn't already highly praised, but a lot of its negative reviews revolve around bugs. So where do we go from here? To iOS and Android, of course. On November 23rd, 2018, the name Stick Fight the Game Mobile became present on several different social media platforms, such as YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. It appeared that Landfall was working on a mobile version of the game, and this game would be created alongside NetEase Games, a game division of a tech company from China. These social media accounts began to tease the release of the game around December of 2018, with a quote-unquote technical deletion test for players to try out the game for the first time. A closed beta was begun a few months later on March 20th, 2019, before closing on April 18th of the same year, and after some bug squashing, the game was soft launched on May 23rd in Canada, Mexico, and Brazil, before receiving an international release soon after. This game featured several notable differences, including a limited quick match mode, which has only 9 rounds per game, a 2v2 mode, and a challenge mode which features mostly parkour. While it's interesting to have a different take on the classic endless stick fight formula, I think it would be nice to at least have this endless formula on the mobile version as just one mode. Not to mention, the controls are nowhere near as versatile and fun as the desktop version. Everything feels hard to reach, and tricks I could pull off easily on desktop I struggled with on mobile. Now to be fair, I've had less time on the mobile version, but that shouldn't excuse the lack of maneuverability, especially considering my high playtime on the desktop version. And of course, the most unholy part of mobile games is even present here. Advertisements. In conclusion, while Stick Fight the Game Mobile does have its good moments, I don't feel as though there's enough to keep me interested in playing the game for more than a few minutes. If you've become interested in the game through this mobile version, I wholeheartedly think that you should look to purchase the PC version of this game, or even the Nintendo Switch port. On October 29th, 2019, the Stick Fight development team made an update on the release of the game on consoles, saying that the previous porting company had abandoned the project and had stopped communicating with Landfall almost entirely. As such, Landfall had been forced to find a new company to undertake the process of putting the game on other platforms. A few months later, on December 29th, another update was made, saying that they had found a new company for porting and were working with them to get the games on consoles sometime in 2020. However, this date was pushed back, likely due to an unnamed global pandemic that I'm not technically allowed to say on YouTube, until a release on the Nintendo Switch was confirmed on April Fool's Day of 2021, which was dubbed Landfall Day because 3 other big announcements were also made that day. The Switch port of Stick Fight was done by 24-Bit Games, a programming studio from Johannesburg, South Africa, who have worked with big studios such as Disney and Devolver Digital. And in my opinion, they did a damn good job with this port. While I'm not quite used to the use of a controller for this game, I think it's still been able to retain the versatility of the original version, and is definitely a go-to for quick, portable fun. However, it suffers in similar places to the previous iterations: bugs. I won't go on a massive list/rant again, but one bug that's notable is the game freezing and not allowing anyone to move unless everyone quits out of the game. But other than that, it's a great version of the game and one I definitely recommend picking up. And even if you only have a PlayStation or an Xbox, it's possible that you'll get your share of Stick Fight this year, so stay tuned. Now, it's time to conclude. Stick Fight the Game is an odd little game in Landfall's library. Despite being treated as a side project that isn't often worked on, it has become one of Landfall's most popular games, becoming one of their only games to reach the console market. Even though it's not nearly as popular as it once was, it's still a super fun game, and one I definitely feel that more people should play. I just wanted you to
Get this off my bird chest so my word becomes blessed. Never classified reactions to divide. Now I never socialize. Paranoid of public eye. You ain't hip hop. I can't label your disguise. Take the hip and make it trip. Titles, test, and compromise. Talk some ish and build a shtick. Then prepare yourself to